And now rebel forces in the war-torn Ethiopian region of Tigray have rejected a ceasefire offer from the central government, raising fears of further violence a day after the fighters retook the regional capital, Mekele. The recapture of the city by Tigrayan fighters and the retreat of Ethiopian government troops on Monday marked a standing about turn in the country's devastating 8-month civil war. In the wake of Mekele's capture, the Ethiopian government announced a unilateral ceasefire for several months. But on Tuesday, Tigrayan forces categorically ruled out a truce, with a spokesman for the Tigray People's Liberation Front, TPLF, saying their forces would not rest until the Ethiopian military and its allied forces had left the entire region. We are now joined by CHELEKA Wanjoy, our Addis Ababa-based reporter, to bring us more insight into the matter. Good evening, CHELEKA.
Good evening.
Well, CHELEKA, would you please bring us close to the news of the rejection of the ceasefire, which is indefinitely a setback to finding a lasting solution to peace in Ethiopia? Kindly bring us to speed on what has been transpiring.
Well, I think we now have a more complicated case in the northern region. What we had in the past 8 months was the government striving to take control of the northern region and putting there its own military in order to do what it said was a return to the rule of law of the region. Well, we know before there was the Tigray People's Liberation Front, a party that was once very powerful in Ethiopia for the past 27 years and had its own force, the Tigray Defense Forces, that was formed after it was declared as a threat to the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. And the Prime Minister said that on 4th November last year, the forces loyal to the TPLF attacked the military command there, and that's, triggered the war that we've seen for the past 8 months. Now, what we've seen over the past few days is we had the government in control, and now we have the Tigray Defense Forces coming back and taking over most of the parts or some of the parts in the northern region and claiming that it controls the region. And we've seen the government forces withdrawing its military from there. Well, today the government military boss, as well as the spokesperson of the State Ministry of Foreign Affairs, said that the withdrawal of the government troops is not anything to go by as far as being scared of the Tigray Defense Forces is concerned. It says that it withdrew its military just for the sake of deploying it to other parts so it can concentrate on other issues. But on the other side, we have the Tigray Defense Forces claiming victory and saying that it will continue to take over all the other parts that have been taken over by the federal forces.
Now, CHELEKA, would you please, what has been the response of the Ethiopian government since the news of the rejection was announced?
Well, what we're having now is, the government, I think, is caught in between a tough place and a rocky field, I would use those words, because it had already assured its citizens that it had control over the northern region. And now, what is happening now is really challenging the power of the current Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Now, remember, all these are happening in a time when we're still waiting for the results of the election that were held on 21st of this month. So, and the Prime Minister is expecting to get victory so that he can be able to end the transition period that he is in and legitimize his power. So that it really kind of tests his power right now and his patience. What he will do next will determine a lot. And we know the international community is very keen on this whole issue. It's looking at the whole issue and seeing how the Prime Minister will react. So whatever reaction that comes out really has a really challenging point on the current government.
Well, the offer of a ceasefire by the Ethiopian government was seen as a capitulation to international pressure that was mounting against a war that has left hundreds dead and thousands more displaced. What exactly led to the offer, and is there a possibility of the two warring forces coming together to sign a peace accord?
It's a very, very complicated issue. I would keep using the word complicated because we have two sides: the warring factions, which is now the federal government, and the Tigray Defense Forces on the other side. Two sides that are carrying pride, each of them with their own justifications. The Tigray Defense Forces saying that the government did not have any justification to go in and displace them from there. The government on the other side saying the Tigray Defense Forces not having justification to really be part of running the government the other side, because they have been seen as an outlawed sect. But now what we have is it's a unilateral ceasefire, just the government saying it has done a ceasefire. The Tigray Defense Forces telling Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed that if he wants them to also honor the ceasefire, then he must take up and account for all the atrocities that have happened in the past 8 months. So that makes it very difficult. On the other side, we have a humanitarian crisis that is deteriorating because now the humanitarian agencies don't know how they will get access to this place, because they were getting access in the past few months through the federal government, but now the federal government seemingly does not have that much control over the region. So how will this happen? We have close to 1 million people who are already depending on humanitarian aid, another about 4 million people who are, in emergency situation. So it's really a complicated issue. The international community has praised the ceasefire, saying that if it is handled in a good way, meaning both parties agree to it, then it might lead to a lasting solution. But with the kind of pride that we are seeing on both ends, it's really a long way to go.
Well, before I let you go, Coletta, quickly bring us to speed on the status of the results of last week's parliamentary elections.
Well, we know that counting is still going on. It is a big country, very many. We had about more than 400 electoral constituencies that voted, and we know that not the whole country did not vote. So right now what is happening is the National Electoral Board is receiving results from different electoral constituencies that voted. It has said that you're supposed to announce the results in the next few days, but now with the issue in the north, this might delay this whole issue. So we're just on a waiting mode to see when the election results will be announced, and when and if the electoral board is prepared to roll out elections on 6th September on around 60 electoral constituencies that did not vote this time because of insecurity and other challenges.
Well, thank you so much, Coletta, for that update, and thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Well, that was Coletta Lwando giving us an update on the Tigray Forces reject ceasefire offer. Moving on with our news. Well, for now, we'll take a break and we'll be right back with more interesting stories on the outside. Keep watching.